Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Russell. I'm the Vice President for Philanthropy and External Affairs here at St. Francis House. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully, you're all indoors with a cup of tea and a blanket around your shoulders on this very chilly Boston day. I have the great privilege of being joined by Karen LaFrazia, the President and CEO of St. Francis House, for this year's State of the Agency. There's a lot going on both here at St. Francis House and in homeless services in general, locally, nationally. So, Karen, I thought we'd jump right in. There's been a
Sure.
lot of changes in federal policy recently as to how homeless services are funded, getting a lot of press. Can you walk us through what that means, sort of both on a big picture level and how that's going to affect us here at St. Francis House?
Yeah, sure, Andrews. So first, hi everybody, and thank you for coming and joining us this afternoon. So, I don't say this lightly. I have been doing homeless services for 40 years,
Mm,
and I am going to say this new federal policy that has been issued, and I'll talk a little bit more about where it stands right now, but is probably the most significant in a very draconian kind of way.
mm,
It's going to have significant negative impacts for people who are experiencing homelessness and have moved out of homelessness and are now housed. And I
mm,
think that's probably the part of this policy that is most tragic.
mm,
So just to put it in context, there are multiple streams of funding that provide sources of revenue for helping people move beyond homelessness. This particular source of funding comes from the federal government, from HUD. We'll call it the Continuum of Care funding, otherwise known as COC. This particular funding has been for decades, for more than 30 years, this has been a funding stream. Over those course of those 30 years, this funding, 90% of this funding across the entire country supports people who have been homeless and are now permanently housed.
mm,
They have a home. We're talking, magnitude of scale in terms of sort of the dollars. We're looking at about 3.6, $3.9 million across the country. Because of this change that has been proposed and is trying to be implemented at the federal level, nearly 90% of that funding is going to be taken away from being allowed to be used for people who are for housing.
wow.
So imagine across the country, that means there are about 170,000 households. We're talking single adults like we serve here at St. Francis House. We're talking about families that are now have a permanent place to live. And when this goes into effect, will no longer have a permanent place to live. Um, and I think it's also important to note that to be eligible for this particular line of funding, you need to be a person that has a disability. So we're talking about people who have a disability. We're talking about people that have a heart failure, people that have veterans that have PTSD, and women that have been trafficked that have PTSD. We're talking about people that have significant mental health issues that are now stable. We're talking about people that have had a substance use disorder and are now in recovery. So we're talking about a lot of very vulnerable people that have moved from a place of homelessness and are now being housed. In Massachusetts,
Yeah.
what we're looking at here is, that's going to be about $91 million that is going to be impacted, and that translates to nearly 4,000 households. And of course, in Boston, we're looking at, what had been about $46 million that was being spent on rental housing will now be less than $14 million.
Wow.
And that funding will get reallocated.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll get repurposed. So it's not that there's a taking away of the money.
Yeah.
It's really about, it reflects the way this current federal administration understands homelessness, why people are homeless. And at the root of it all, it disavows the notion that homelessness is a housing issue and that there's not enough permanent housing. And it basically shifts it and blames the individuals who are currently experiencing homelessness and puts the fault or the blame or the responsibility on the individual, that it's somehow or other it's a moral failure, and therefore those dollars need to be addressed to affect to act on what those issues are.
Hmm. And so you talk about the impact here in Massachusetts, here in Boston. What what does this look like for St. Francis House?
Well, as I said, 40 years of this, I probably haven't stayed up at night worrying about this as much as this particular policy has been going. So for St. Francis House, we have a number of housing initiatives, right? And as I said, this particular stream of funding does not impact all of our housing.
Yeah.
But it does impact, some of our housing, and we could potentially be looking at more than half of one of our particular housing projects might be at risk for people who are now currently housed not being able to maintain that housing.
Wow. Wow. And so you're talking about people, Karen, you said, like, we talk about this population all the time as being a vulnerable population, but this is the most vulnerable of the vulnerable that we're going to see potentially losing their housing here. Folks that have been with us for a while.
Well, and I think that's the last part, right? It is the most vulnerable of the vulnerable because it's people that need to be, for us at St. Francis House, it's folks that have had long-term homelessness. They've been chronically homeless. They have a disability, but now they are living and thriving. And this is the part that is the most offensive about this particular policy. It's you're taking people that have been permanently housed 5, 10, 15 years. This is their home.
Yeah.
This is their family.
Yeah.
And the housing comes with services.
Yeah.
It's not that it's a situation where you take somebody and you put them in housing and you say, good luck and God bless. Right? These resources also provide intensive services to ensure that people are maintaining their housing. They're addressing whatever those underlying issues are, and then they're thriving because of it.
Yeah.
And so it's worrisome,
Yeah.
What would happen. But I am going to say there's a glimmer of hope. if I can say that. And there's a glimmer of hope, and there's actually, I always hate to come to these conversations and with nothing that anybody can do, right? Because we are not hopeless at St. Francis House, and there is a call to action. So currently, this funding had been allocated for 2 years.
Yep.
And so it was a 2-year cycle. And then the federal administration changed that rather abruptly and has now put 1 year, and now there's a competition going on. There's an implementation of these new rules. The national organizations, advocacy organizations, I think 20 different attorney generals across the country, the city of Boston have joined a lawsuit, have filed a lawsuit against the federal administration. So last Thursday, about an hour before the case was going to be heard, the HUD administration rescinded the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. However, they have said they are committed to reissuing it with all of these same sort of changes embedded in it. There'll be another court hearing next Friday, a week from today, and we'll see what happens at that point.
Yeah.
This is not a foregone conclusion that this will stop.
Yeah.
In fact, I have every reason to believe that if not now, further down the road, these policies will be put into effect. And it's not a matter of funding. The money is there.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not taking funding away and reallocating it for something else. The funding is there. It is truly a reflection of the federal administration's looking the other way of decades of what's been demonstrated best practices. There are effective outcomes that we can demonstrate across the country. So it's in the face of that based on a different assessment of what the problem is, that is this being forwarded.
Yeah.
So I think there's
a QR code up on the screen. Do you want to tell people what I think I can feel the outrage coming through the Zoom, and everybody I talk to in my life feels the same way. And I think there's so many changes happening on the governmental level. People can be a little confused about what they can do. So if folks want to try to help, what can they do?
Well, I would very much say, I hope you do want to help. Right. And so there's a QR code. If you click on that, I believe there's a link in the chat that will also take you to the National Alliance to End Homelessness. This is a national organization that does advocacy. You will find there a link to where you can reach out to your senator, reach out to your congressperson. This funding, these policies have been congressionally enacted, and it is the administration that is essentially changing the rules. And so we need Congress to act. And this is not a partisan issue, by the way. I mean, this funding is across the country. This will affect people that are in red states, blue states, purple states. This will affect everybody across the country. So I think, and the consequence of that will be that people will become homeless again. It's like you can't even get your mind around that. And for a place like St. Francis House, we're going to take people that in our city, across our state, that currently have a permanent place to live, have them be back on the streets and walking in the front door of St. Francis House again, looking to start all over again. So it has impact on the individuals. It'll have impact on St. Francis House, because at the end of the day, we still have an obligation to those folks that are living in our house.
Right.
So
a lot going on, obviously, and if folks do want to help, that page will take you to an advocacy page. Put in your information. It will contact your local representatives on the federal level and let them know that you don't want to see these changes in the policies that Karen has just sort of outlined that are going to directly impact formerly homeless individuals across the country.
Andrew, there's one thing I would add, though, right? Because like I said, St. Francis House is not a place of hopelessness.
Yeah.
All right. And we are very much committed to the people that we serve. Right. Like 40 years ago when we were founded, and it was out of a sense of moral obligation. And so I would say that we need to affect this policy. We need to do everything we can to push back on this at a national level. But when you think about it, just at St. Francis House, we will do absolutely everything in our power. Should this policy move forward, should we be forced to have to implement this action, and move from permanent housing to short-term housing, because that's essentially what would happen. We're committed to not having any of the folks that we serve that are currently living in St. Francis House housing to have to return to homelessness, because there's a lot of panic going on right now, right? There's panic at the agency level, there's panic at the individual level. So as we always do, we're committed to the policy, we're committed to the agency, but we're committed to that unique individual. So if somebody is currently living in a unit and this policy is going to affect them, we're not going to take this lying down, and we will do everything we can. It might cost us some more money.
Sure.
To do that, but it will be our commitment that we do not want to, see people return to homelessness. So whatever we can do, I was telling my husband about this, and I said, all right, we might be bringing people home. But but in all seriousness, we will do everything we can to not see that happening. But that can't happen on a national level, right? St. Francis House may be able to affect that, with a few folks that, are, a couple of dozen folks that we're working with as unique individuals. But nationally, we really need to push back on this.
Karen, you talk about sort of affecting the lives of the people that are, in this one particular program of the many different programs we have for housing, right? So that's one slice of the pie here at St. Francis House. And then you move beyond that to the almost 10,000 people a year that we serve. Very exciting changes happening here at the same time, right? So big renovation happening to the first 4 floors of the building that we're in now, our first sort of home here on 39 Boylston Street. Can you talk about where we are today with this renovation and what's going to be happening over the next 2.5 months or so until we're finished?
Sure. So St. Francis House has always practiced what we would call, trauma-informed care. We recognize that the men and the women that come to us have had a lot of trauma in their lives prior to becoming homelessness, and certainly the experience of being homeless is traumatic. And there's some very real things that happen to people as a result of trauma. So in our interpersonal connections with folks, we take those principles of how to help somebody, of making sure that people feel safe, making sure that people have control over their lives, making sure that people have agency and have a sense of a positive outcome.
Yeah.
So that's in the personal interaction. When we took a step back and we looked at our property and the actual physical building itself, we came to realize that the building was actually re-traumatizing people. That the physical structure, now you'd have to remember, St. Francis House, the building that we're in at 39 Boylston Street, was built in 1912 as the old Boston Edison headquarters. It's a very hierarchical, structure. It's about 11 stories tall. And there's many barriers. In fact, we might even have a picture of it. If you were to walk into the, so we have a picture of what the lobby had looked like for years and years. On a day like today where it's frigid and it's cold, we're talking 500 people a day walking in the front door, walking through that lobby. It's overstimulating. It was chaotic. There's no natural wayfinding. So as much as we believe in the values and live our values of welcoming people, of creating a sense of safety, the building itself was working against us. So what we were finding is that, for those 10,000 people a year or 500 people a day, many folks were coming in and feeling anxious. Their levels of anxiety were rising, and to the point where they may not want to come back. So how could we possibly help somebody if the building itself was, pushing them away? Getting through the property, right? There are multiple barriers. We'd have workforce programming, we have recovery-based programming, we have housing. This is home for 56 people. So we had to start to really assess where were the pain points. Where did the physical building not embrace a trauma-informed? The architect we were originally working with used to say to us, buildings are not neutral. They can either hurt or they can heal. And our building was hurting.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, anyone who's been to St. Francis House in previous years, high ceiling, a lot of marble, a lot of noise, very dark. A lot of dark surfaces and a wonderful welcoming staff. But if that's your first impression walking into the building versus what it's going to be, which I'm happy to share with people, this was
I think this is
a few months ago,
right?
the construction spot. But this is the post renovation rendering of what the lobby is going to look like, and you talk about night and day.
Yeah. I mean, what I will say is, this is our new lobby, and if you were to come by it just about looks like this right now. So again, we looked at, what are the trauma-informed principles? So things like softer edges, right? Places where people can have sight lines, again, that sense of feeling safe. Removing the barriers to getting to where within the building you would need to get to. So the grand staircase is beautiful, but it's very functional. It creates an access point for people to get to the new community center on what will now be the first floor. Above the ground floor, so that people can more easily make their way. We're introducing plants. One of the things is biophilia has a direct impact on people's blood pressure and their levels of anxiety. So bringing in elements of nature, went from our color scheme to natural wood tones. As you said earlier, like the hard marble surfaces, right? So we did away with all of those surfaces and replaced them with sound absorbing materials. So the ceiling in the new community center, which will be the main gathering space, has sound absorbing elements built into it. It's all natural wood with the sound absorbing elements, softer lighting. So there's a lot that we could talk about. I know we only have 15 minutes, but so I think there's two things that are happening here. One is the actual experience that our guests will have and our staff when they come into the space, and how that creates a more welcoming, less anxious, more engaging opportunity. The other thing we talk about when we talk about trauma is people having some sense of choice and control over their lives. it's directly affects their ability to envision a different life for themselves and engage in other kind of services. So these changes that were made are also allowing us post renovation to change the way we deliver services in two particular in both on our food and our clothing.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So exciting. Really big changes. And scroll through some of the other pictures and mid renovations. And here's the dining area.
Here's the new community center that we're going to have, and so people will be able to, again, brown tables, natural wood elements. I think you can see the ceiling.
Yeah.
Can I jump on
this?
this?
Please.
So remember when I was just saying that, we're going to have a different way of delivering services.
Yeah.
So I know many of you have volunteered at St. Francis House, and many of you might have volunteered in the kitchen. And so you would know that we serve like cafeteria style. People would have to line up and then go through a line, and we'd put things on a tray. One of the challenges there is 500 people a day, and we're serving breakfast and we're serving lunch, and it's like a 4-lane highway. We are pushing that many people through a 90-minute window to eat breakfast and to eat lunch. That creates tension. We did a survey, and we looked at the number of people times the number of meals with the number of seats. People had a total of 14 minutes from the time they would queue up to the time they had to turn. If we were going to serve all the people we had, that in and of itself, you can't even enjoy any fellowship or conversation. So our new way of doing business will be that we're going to have an all-day serve. Our new kitchen enables us to be able to allow people to eat when they're hungry, and it'll allow people to choose what they want. So we'll have the main entree of the day, and we'll have an alternate. So from the time we open until the time we close, people will come in. Because right now, if you came in at 10 o'clock in the morning, breakfast was over for an hour, and you have to wait an hour and a half before we have lunch. So now instead of that, we will just keep the dining room, the kitchen, and then the community center will be open all day long. People can come in. Maybe they want the entree of the day. Maybe they want the salmon and the au gratin, potatoes and string beans. But if you don't eat fish, there'll be an alternate. It might be a turkey wrap. It might be a salad. And the same thing with our clothing department. I think we have a picture. Oh, so that was our beautiful new kitchen.
There's our beautiful new kitchen.
And
with our wonderful new chef.
Chef Ricky. Clothing. If you were a volunteer here, you would have also helped out in our clothing department. And as you would see, that we would have you would have sat behind the desk, you would have gone behind those doors, you would have brought out a choice, because we wanted to give our guests choice. Now, in this new way, and I think we might have, so now we have a clothing boutique. Now our guests are able to actually go in and shop like anybody else would shop. They can go through the racks, they can try on the clothes. We are still going to need volunteers, because you become the personal shopper. Because one of the wonderful things that happens is we have personal interaction. Oh, that shirt looks great on you. That color is great on you. Where are you going? We actually have positive human interactions with our guests. And again, enabling our guests to be in control of what they're going to wear, what they're going to eat, when they're going to eat it. These things are things that we all take for granted, but they're cornerstones. They're fundamental in helping people be able to move from homelessness into a more stable life for themselves.
Yeah, so I mean, you said it very well. I think taking it for granted. When you go to a restaurant, when you sit down and they've moved from breakfast to lunch, they hand you the lunch menu, right? Or you go to Macy's or you go to TJ Maxx, they're not going behind a wall and handing you 3 things. You're going through and shopping for yourself and choosing the things that you want for your own personal style. The
meals allow for us to take into consideration religious preferences, cultural preferences, dietary needs. So it's a much, we always talk about treating people with respect and dignity. This is an example of that.
And an enormous amount of work has happened in the past 18 months or so. And so when do you expect all of the renovations to wrap up at this point?
Oh, good question. Well, first, I have to give a huge shout out to our construction partner, Elaine Construction. They have been amazing partners in this. I mean, you have a general contractor, they come in, they do a job. They have truly embraced St. Francis House. And I would say they have become part of this transformation from more than just a nuts and bolts, but, really embracing the vision. And They have committed to us to having our certificate of occupancy on February 13th.
Wow.
So what better Valentine's Day present?
Oh, how terrific is that? That's just about
Feel
2
the
months.
love.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's terrific. That's terrific. Shifting gears a little bit, we've talked about other sort of exciting things that are happening. 41 LaGrange Street, which
Oh,
is sort of one
that is
block
cool.
over from here.
Yep.
126 mixed units of both permanent housing and affordable housing. Can you tell people what's the difference between those two things and how's the project going?
Another amazing project, I would say. So right around the corner, from St. Francis House is 41 LaGrange Street. 41 LaGrange Street with our development partner, the Planning Office for Urban Affairs. So they are, again, just, an amazing development partner. There's probably nobody that I know that understands siting, regulation, financing, all those pieces of building affordable housing. And obviously we provide the resident services. So together, we are constructing, as you said, a 19-story property. I think there you can see sort of on the left is the rendering of what it'll look like when it's done, and on the right is sort of where we're at. Currently, actually, right now it's all wrapped,
Yeah.
and so we've got the facade completed, wrapping it. It'll be 126 units. It'll be 70 of those units will be for people coming directly out of homelessness. We work with the City of Boston's coordinated entries system and identifying people, and they go from shelter in the streets, and they have a beautiful new home that provides them all the safety. And then again, we provide all the services to ensure that they'll be successful. The other 56 units, it's a lottery. It's 100% affordable. So I guess like you asked me to tell you the difference. So 126, all units are 100% affordable at varying that reflect varying levels of income. So the 70 are for people that are coming out of homelessness. The majority of folks are extremely low income. But the other 56 units, it's, studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, people that are making what we would call 50 or 60 or upwards of 80% of whatever the median income is in this area. So the area median income. And then the rents are set at a point that is affordable for somebody that makes 50% of the area median income, or 60 or 80% of the median income. So, so what I love about this project is that it reflects our commitment to integration, to inclusivity, to recognizing that we're building a property, we're building an apartment building that on the same floor you might have somebody in a studio apartment that's coming out of homelessness, living next door to somebody that's an X-ray technician at Tufts Medical Center, to a young family that maybe they're from the Chinatown community and we're being priced out of Chinatown, and now they can stay in the neighborhood. So we're very excited about this property and how it is socially and economically inclusive. And and it's our latest initiative.
And you talk about blending a lot, Karen, and here's a sneak peek for folks what an inside unit looks like. Downtown Crossing has undergone an enormous amount of changes. I'm about 30 years in Boston, and I think back to what this neighborhood looked like in 1996 when I first came here versus now. But this LaGrange building is going between what are 2 luxury high rises, basically.
Absolutely.
But you won't be, both from the outside and then from the inside as well, you're not going to be able to really tell the difference between, what's affordable housing and what's not.
No, I think that, there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, in the world out there about what affordable housing is, that somehow or other it's something substandard or it's less than in some way. Sometimes people worry about their property values, but the truth is this is a beautiful construction. We're using sort of high-end fixtures, and every unit has again that this is a 1-bedroom unit. So somebody would have their bedroom, that door, and then if you go in the right, there's a walk-in closet there that's bigger than what I have. It's beautiful. And then and then there's the living room and the bedroom and a kitchen area. So for our folks that are coming out of homelessness, this provides safety. This provides a sense of security. They can go in, they can shut the door, and they're in control of their lives. And then on site, St. Francis House hires an entire team. So we will be hiring a whole on-site team of residential services. So there's 2 floors of amenity space. So like any other beautiful, sort of property, you have common area, you have amenity space. So there are 2 floors of amenity space. There's a fitness room, so for folks that want to work out or work on the machines. So, and then, on-site laundry, on-site bike storage, everything that any other apartment building in downtown Boston would have. So it's very exciting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And you talked about the renovations, about this idea about building community through the spaces that we're renovating. I mean, and everything that you just said about these common areas and common spaces for people to share sort of follows that same reasoning, right? That same logic.
Yeah, I mean, we have 2 positions that are just dedicated to building community, internal in the but also in the broader community, right? So, if you have 126, households living in a property, we have these beautiful amenity spaces. There's opportunity for, educational activities. There's opportunity for social activities and recreational activities. So, maybe it's a Super Bowl Sunday party, right? Or maybe it's a cooking demonstration or, I don't know, I'll show my age, a Tupperware party. So, there are things that we can do that aren't just specifically for the people coming out of homelessness, because we're building neighbors.
Right.
These are people that are your new neighbors. And you want to be able to build those social relationships and those social connections, and then actually have the services on site. So we have it has a full property management company, a third-party property manager will be managing the property. There's 24/7 concierge security at the front door. So it will look no different than the Kensington or the Parker, and we're right in between.
And we started this conversation talking about, big changes at the federal level when it comes to funding affordable housing and permanent housing. Are those changes going to affect this property at all?
No, thank God, no. So as I said, there's multiple funding streams. And so all of the development dollars have been committed, and, the property, actually, no one ever said this. It's ahead of schedule. So
rare construction project.
It's a construction project. Again, we have an amazing construction partner there. Demio is our general contractor. They are, we were thinking it was going to be August, and I was just talking with folks this week, and we could potentially, and I think most realistically, we will start leasing up in next June. So within 6 months. People that are currently on the street coming to St. Francis House, sitting in our, in our dining room, will be living next door in a beautiful new apartment. So we're ahead of schedule, June of 26. So February of 26, we'll be moving into our new renovated space at 39. June of 26, people will be moving into their new homes. And we'll continue to fight the fight on the federal level.
A lot of great things happening in 2026, including the agency's return to the Boston Marathon after a couple of years off, right? We're very grateful to the Boston Athletic Association and their partners at Bank of America for awarding St. Francis House with 5 bibs for the race this year. For those of you who might not know, the Boston Marathon represents a great fundraising opportunities for a lot of nonprofits, and runners commit to raising a certain amount of money. So we have 5 runners who are qualifying through our bib program, and then 2 additional runners, including one of our trustees, who have ran fast enough that they've qualified for the race and are still choosing to raise money for St. Francis House.
That's wonderful.
So it's just a very exciting April. So February, April, June, it's something happening every couple months.
Every couple of months. And I just saw they put up some QR codes.
Oh, great. Yeah. So, learn more about the team. Karen and I have had the great privilege in the past couple of weeks of sitting down via Zoom, because we've got runners from all over the country joining us this year. But some great stories from people about what's bringing them to St. Francis House, why they're running, why they're choosing to run for us. So you can scan the QR code here and learn a little bit more about the team and everything that they're doing to support our efforts here. There's a QR code for volunteering, and then there's a QR code to donate as well. It's a busy time of year for people. and a busy time of year for people philanthropically too, choosing to make their gifts for year end, both for giving purposes and for tax purposes as well. So follow those QR codes. There'll be links in the chat as well. I know we had some questions come in. Yeah, I guess going back to that first question that we talked about, Karen, that all of these changes with the HUD program that you talked about, when might those changes end up affecting the direct services that we offer here?
Yeah, I wish I could give you an exact answer on that, because as I said, there's litigation that's in play right now. So for the moment, there's a pause on the implementation of this. We'll see what happens next Friday.
Okay.
In the original time frame, we would have been submitting applications in December and into January, with decisions being made in May. At this point, we don't know what that time frame would be. The best case scenario is the litigation is successful, and we get through 27, calendar year 27, and we see what happens between now and then as to whether or not these changes are going to roll out. So I guess it's a big range. I mean, it could be as early as June of 26 if the original time frame happens. It could get pushed out a year or two. I think we at St. Francis House, as I said, we're prepared to put the financial resources necessary to prevent folks from, but that could add a $500,000 a year burden to us. So we're doing a lot of scenario planning right now around different timeframes and different, financial implications.
Yeah. Question has come in about volunteers. Do you think we're going to need fewer volunteers with the new kitchen and dining room?
No, we don't. It's a great question, whoever asked that, because we are absolutely going to need more volunteers. We depend on volunteers we could never do all the work that we do at St. Francis House. And these new changes, we're going to need people. I mean, we're still going to need to receive the clothing donations. We're going to have to sort them, all of those activities. On the clothing department, we're going to need people to help, be those personal shoppers with folks. And then on the food services, we have the new kitchen. We actually have 2 food services area. We're building out the lower level to be a prep area. So we're going to need folks prepping food, cooking food, serving food. And because we're going to be open all day long, there'll be more choice for you in terms of the hours, and that you could come in as well and volunteer.
We have time for one more question. I think folks can't necessarily donate at a level to support, a $500,000 gap in the budget.
No, who could?
As we're sitting here on December 12th, if you had to choose 1 or 2 items for folks to think about giving beyond financially, what are the things that we're in need of at this time of year?
All you had to do was step outside today, right? The frigid cold, right? And so, we're serving, upwards of 500 people a day. Everybody needs hats, coats, socks, gloves, those things, footwear. I cannot tell you how much footwear is a needed item. It's a healthcare intervention for people to be able to have footwear that in the cold and in the snow, feet get wet, right? Yeah. You need good footwear, and we never have enough footwear to be able to meet that demand. So we're always looking for people, clothing drives, if you in your church, at your synagogue, at your work environment, at your workplace, winter coats, footwear, warm winter clothing. That's probably what we need most right now.
That's great. I just want to wrap up on one thing, going back to the renovations at 39 Boylston, Karen, we're obviously back into the building to a certain degree, right? The ground floor and the first floor are mostly done at this point. What has the reaction been from staff and from guests as they sort of walk through?
It's been amazing, right? I mean, so for those of you that have been by recently, we're operating out of 2 separate properties, and but for folks that have been coming into our 39 Boylston, they're seeing the ground floor, that beautiful staircase, and the elevator coming online and things like that. So I had I had one woman who had been here, coming here, she went into the bathroom. I think I have a thing about the bathroom.
You do too.
Everybody that comes here, and if you come, I'm going to take you into the bathroom. Because, well, think about it. That is like one of the most intimate moments in your life, right? And so we made special attention to ensuring that all of our finishes were elevated.
Yeah.
You know, they're not aluminum, you know, it's not institutional. So we've got these beautiful, you know, framed mirrors and fixtures, and the countertop. I don't know what the material is, but it looks kind of marble-esque,
Yeah.
and it allows a certain privacy. We even went so far as, because again, it's about your senses, you know, your sight, touch, smell. We've infusing the air with essential oils that can be that you know, lavender for calmness. So again, just everywhere that you can think about where we can have an impact in the guest experience. So this woman walks in, she says, she goes in the bathroom, she says, I feel like I'm in a hotel. This is like amazing. And you know, so we've had a couple of guests coming in. The one that I think breaks my heart the most is I was standing in the lobby and a guest came in who goes to our recovery support center, you know, the space that we're actually in right now. And he was commenting, and what he said to me was, we don't deserve this. Oh my God, that is exactly the reason we are doing and putting as much, you know, resource into this as possible, because our guests absolutely do deserve it. And the fact that they think that they don't is heartbreaking. So yeah, so we're close to the finish line on you know, sort of the finishing the product. We're close to fundraising for it. We still have a little bit of more money that we have to raise. But the end is in sight.
That's exciting.
And it's a beautiful site.
That's exciting. That's exciting. Karen, I want to thank you for taking the time for joining us today. Thank all of the donors and supporters and volunteers and guests and staff that are with us. None of the work that we do would be possible without you. Everything that's so exciting that's happening here at St. Francis House is only enabled through your work. I know I speak for Karen and I speak for the rest of the staff and the board here when I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, a Happy Holidays, in whatever way that you celebrate. And thanks again for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. And come visit.